Good evening and welcome back to another episode of What's Your Story? Tonight we are sitting down sort of as an impromptu interview with Thomas Bachelder. So Thomas has been coming to the Graves Library for many summers now, and when he and his wife, family come, we always try to catch up, and a couple of years ago I learned about what they do for their business, so they became more fast friends because of what they do. So first of all, welcome to our show.
Yeah, it's
Thank
great.
you for sitting down with us, taking the time on your vacation. So we usually start our show by asking our guest where you grew up, school, that sort of thing. So where are you from?
Well, you know, my name is Thomas Bachelder, but I grew up in Quebec, so it's also Thomas Bachelder. And we moved around a lot. We went to school in France for winemaking. So we're winemakers, Mary Delaney and I. And, you know, in Quebec, you usually keep your own name. The women keep their own names. So our kids are Delaney Bachelder or Delaney Bachelder. And we went to France to, discover how to make Pinot Noir in Burgundy, Chardonnay and Gamay. And we moved all around after that. We met this lovely young lady at wine school whose name is Louisa Ponzi, and she's of the famous Oregon Ponzi winery. So eventually we went out and worked with her and startup place called Lemelson Vineyards in Oregon. But eventually we ended up in Canada, in Niagara, where we're not from, so just north of Buffalo, just north of Rochester.
Yeah.
On the peninsula around from Toronto. You know, Toronto's right above Rochester, and we're on this warm peninsula. It's a little warmer than the Finger Lakes because that lake is so warm, even though it's the north of the Finger Lakes. But we consider the Finger Lakes brothers and sisters doing the same thing, the same crazy cold winters. But it's 12 hours from here by car, so we do overnight stops on the way here. But the reason we come to southern coastal Maine is because Montrealers do. A lot of Montrealers go to Algonquin, a lot go to Kennebunkport here, and a lot go further north. But we've always loved this place. The Delaney family always went here and came here in the early years. And we rent 4 or 5 cottages, usually in Goose Rocks, if we can find them, and just do a bunch of shared dinners.
Yep. Oh,
so that's how I
great.
find myself here.
So you've been coming to you've been coming to Graves Library for a while, and you do a little bit of work while you're on vacation. What I try to tell people is don't plug your laptop into our outlet. Use the battery. When the battery wears down, that means you get to go to the beach.
That's
right?
a great one. I hadn't heard that one. Well, you know, when we first worked here, we would always say we wait all year for this vacation in Maine. Why are we working at all? And sometimes it was, to keep putting out fires.
Yeah.
But now, as we're entrepreneurs and we own our little business, which is called Bachelder, and we consult for other wineries, just escaping it all from your own business is a great thing.
Yeah.
So getting a few emails done in the morning, getting some quiet writing done in a library that we can't back in our cottage.
Right.
We're now very happy to come here and just make, all the bike rides I love to do up around Arundel and stuff, such quiet roads, all the time on the beach, all the time spent shopping at the various fish shops for supper, wine shopping, and actually eating and cooking with these 5 families.
Yeah.
Well, we cherish it all the more. And that little work we do here, rather than feeling like we never unplug, makes me feel much more like everything's under control.
Yeah.
It's like when you're a young parent, you can't have a good time at night till the kids are asleep. So it's a similar kind of deal.
So where'd you go to school? Did you go to school in Canada?
We went to school first in Canada for high school and then university. I did communications and music, but I couldn't stop making home wine or learning how to taste wine. So eventually, since we grew up in French and English, we just said, let's go study Pinot Noir in Burgundy.
That's great.
Now, Burgundy, it's northeastern France, so it's between Dijon, where the mustard comes from, although a lot of the mustard seed comes from Canada and the U.S., but I digress. But Dijon up in the north, facing the Jura Mountains in Switzerland, and it ends down in Chalon. So north of Lyon, that's Burgundy.
Yeah.
And Beaujolais touches Lyon. So that's really part of a spiritual home for me in terms of those great grapes and those traditions of wines named not after Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but named after the village they come from.
Right, that's right. Yeah.
So fascinating.
Yeah. So you consult with.
I consult right now just with one called Le Clos Jourdain, and that is in Jordan, Niagara. So it's been franchised into Le Clos Jourdain, and it was a cooperation between Burgundy and Canada, but Canada eventually took it over. So that you can find that online, Le Clos Jourdain, Jordanne. But our own wine is Bachelder.
Okay.
So that's bachelderniagara.com. Our wines are in upper New York State a bit, but we hope to get them in Maine someday.
Anything in here yet? Anything in Maine yet?
We've talked to a couple of distributors, a couple I met just today, and it would just be lovely to see our wine here because we know we come every year.
Yes.
So if our wine was here, for instance, we'd work more. We'd have to do a winemaker's dinner one night of the week we're here, which is not the most horrible thing, but it would be fun to see it here. It doesn't have to be here, but we'd love to see it here. It's all like small lot Pinot Noirs from separate parcels, Chardonnay and Gamay Noir like Beaujolais. So it's expensive stuff. And we don't make much of it. We make about 6,000 cases a year, so it's tiny. But it's good stuff. And there's limestone up there in Niagara, so that's what Burgundy has too. So it gives you that special bright flavor.
Yeah.
Your wine has done yoga, shoulders back.
Yeah. That's funny. So your wine being in Maine, being in Kennebunkport, that can happen because I will tell you a story. There was a couple that came to Kennebunkport probably 6 or 7 years ago, and they needed a notary to marry them. So I'm a notary. The town gives, the town will say, oh, go see Mary Lou at the library. She'll take care of you. So they are also winemakers. They're out in Washington State.
Yeah.
And so a couple of years ago when the pandemic started, I still kept in touch with them, just email exchanges here and there. How are you, Bob and Sue? What's going on? And they would email back and talk about the wine they were making and whatnot. And so they sent me some Cabernet, and I tasted it. And I had Lonnie down at Main and Vine try it. And they asked if she would be willing to participate in a panel, because their new Cabernet was coming out.
Oh, cool.
So she said yes, and also Betsy Ross, who's at the wine house on Main in Kennebunk. So they participated in a panel and tested the new stuff. And then this May, Bob and Sue came for a visit, and their wine is in both of those shops.
That's so crazy.
And it was so much fun, especially for me. I mean, it was so much fun to make that connection for them, but for them to walk in and see their wine on.
Yeah,
so it
really
will
fun.
happen. It will happen.
It'll be the last thing I buy when I'm here.
Bachelder wine is going to be here. So, so how, that's a risky business because you have to depend so much on weather and.
It's getting tougher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things are more up and down, but we don't have, France is having, and I love France. I'm not going to, throw a dart at France. Those are my favorite wines in the world, but they're harvesting in August all the time now. And when I went to wine school there in 92, 93, you harvested in mid-September earliest.
Right.
So in Niagara, and I hate to say up in Niagara because we're all much lower than them. Like we're all on the latitude of southern France or like Barolo in the Piemonte area of Italy, and Burgundy's way up north, like on the same, latitude as parts of southern England, And so, but we are cooler because we're so continental in the winter. And I think as that lake starts to cool down, it looks like a sea, Lake Ontario, seen from Niagara. It just keeps us a little cooler. And even if we can have a torrid summer, we still harvest mid-September to early October.
Yeah.
So that keeps the wines cooler and less jammy tasting.
That's good. That's
good. We offer an alternative for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I know that, even some of the California wineries, they've been dealing with fires, and
Crazy.
I mean, it can be from year to year. It's, it can be really inconsistent.
It is, and some of our
So-
best friends from Oregon are like Bergstrom Winery, which I've seen here, and Elk Cove and Ponzi and Hammacher. We were over in Italy with them earlier this year, and we were talking, and some of those wineries don't have a 2020 Pinot Noir vintage because of the smoke. And so we're all going to suffer from the ups and downs.
Yeah.
It can be fires, it could be hail, it can be anything. But so that's why the work is really starting over in Burgundy, where they're the worst hit on, because they get those winds up from Africa and
Yeah.
sands and sandstorms and everything in green France. So
Yeah.
things are changing for sure. But humans are very adaptable, and viticulture is very adaptive. So you can do things with different clones and shading the plants, leaving more leaves and stuff. It's if the climate really is warmer, then you can deal with it. It's the ups and downs that are hard to deal with. Is it colder one year and warmer the next year?
Right, right.
But one of the things you want in great wine and great terroir, meaning sense of place wines, is you do want vintage variation. You don't want it to taste all the same.
Right.
So consumers, when they're buying high-end wine, they have to be cognizant of the fact that they're going to get a richer year sometimes, a more angular year sometimes, and they have to decide themselves, put this one down, this bottle for a year or two, or this one is delicious right now, but maybe I should put it down too, and do that journey, do a bit of that journey.
I have to write notes and put them on the bottles.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
touch until.
I do the same thing.
Do you do that, Mike?
Yeah, well, mine is mostly I put notes on where I got them. So I shopped at the shops you name. I'm going over to that shop now to get a wine for tonight, and right down across the pier. And I write, if I don't drink them here and take them home, I bought at this store. If a friend gives me a bottle, I go got from this friend, and I try to surprise them with it a few years later.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
I use the Vivino app.
Oh yeah, that's
And
good.
so I make my notes on that. And it's the only thing, like people say, why don't you keep your calendar on your phone? I'm like, I can't do that, but I can keep my wine list on my phone.
That's so good. Well, librarians are great at categorizing things. So of course, I never thought of that. You'd be good at categorizing wines and keeping track. One thing I was really surprised at, a little ad for the library. I was surprised at how you guys do this outreach, and you've built that whole business center. Like, I like sitting in this room, and I will again, but that's especially for business. And I think, it gets people into the library.
Yeah. But it's people like you in mind, because, 6 years ago when we were thinking about that wing, trying to think about who's coming in here. And at that time, it was people like you and your wife. You needed a place to go. Staples over in Biddeford, like you could have copies and things like that done, but you couldn't sit at a table. You couldn't, work at a computer, those kinds of things. Take a phone call.
Yeah.
And so that business center was really a big part of, we needed that in town. And so many people throughout the year would be here on a vacation, and they're the sole proprietor of a business. They needed to get the job done to, like you say, keep things kind of steady.
Keep it going.
And so that's what we saw for a while. So that was part of, when we put the wing on, it was people like you that we had in mind.
Well, that's wonderful.
So-
And over the years, I don't take as many books out. I do look at books when I'm here, and you see people who are only reading newspapers or magazines. And then, of course, you had CDs and videos for so long and trying to adapt. And but I mean, people go on vacation with so many books that they don't read on vacation. But I do take out some from here just because we have all these aspirations when we head on a vacation.
It's so true. It's so true.
And you can't do it all. But
Yeah.
as long as you get a couple of restaurants in, a couple of home cooked meals, a little reading, a lot of talking with friends,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
So-
It's living the moment.
So what do you cook when you're here?
Well, we don't only cook seafood. I mean, we have actually been coming here since like 1988, but sporadically.
Yeah.
And then as we got into our full-time lives and we had children, we came every year for a week in August. We like to say we know that, the Quebec construction holidays are the last 2 weeks of July.
Right.
But we like coming in August because it's cooler, yes, but the water's warmer.
Yes,
And
that's right.
so, you can freeze your toes in July still. So it's a great time to come. And there's a little less people here.
Yeah.
We like to pop down to Kennebunkport for a night on the way in. So we avoid the Saturday traffic. So we'll spend a night down there in the craziness of a restaurant and a Kennebunkport. And then we retire happily up to the Kennebunks for a weekend. No, we cook like a solid diet. We haunt 4 or 5 of the seafood places of seafood, but there's a steak night for sure in there and a pasta night in there just to change it up.
Oh, that's good. That's really
always with a little. We have to bring a little of our wine from home for our friends and family who want to drink it, but we're out haunting all your wine stores, so we're good customers.
That's great. That's great. We appreciate that. How was it for you all during the pandemic? I know different lockdown situations here.
I think we had a more severe lockdown, but we lived in the country, in wine country. So you were still in your cellar and in your vines doing things. It was just sad around Christmas and sad around the holiday times. And we did holiday more around where we were, because everything unlocked in the summers, sort of, outside only. So everybody had to sit outside even if it was raining, but you'd be covered. And all kinds of municipalities make changes, let you sit in the street. And, we had a huge change in Ontario, which was bottle shops were allowed because it's a liquor control board up there.
Right.
And so bottle shops, if you serve food, you were allowed to have a rack of wine. And so just like I was saying earlier, the 3 C's reopening of that fishery up there, now they have a wine corner. Well, they always could have, but they didn't think of it before.
Right.
Maybe Roberta didn't think of that, or it wasn't the time. Whereas in Ontario, you weren't allowed. So now you can do that. And it's really varying the landscape because the LCBO has a great selection of wines from around the world. It's one of the biggest buyers. But there's also some private order wines that the agents bring in that you can get at all these little bottle shops. So you can be in Toronto in an Italian neighborhood and walk into an all-Italian wine store privately owned. So we don't think that's going to go away. People don't want that to go away.
I bet they don't. I bet they don't. That's good, though.
Yeah. It's
one of your best, like if I asked you, I don't usually go by like what I'm eating. I pick a wine out, and it's just gonna go, right?
A girl after my own heart.
So do you have any favorites that would be?
Yeah. So I started out, that's an easy question for me because I started out as a home winemaker. Then I became a wine journalist doing tastings with my friends, was admitted into that, did that for a couple of years, and then went to wine school. But while I was a wine journalist in Montreal, I was like, what if I do this for too long and I end up just sort of liking everything? Right now, Pinot Noir has claimed me, and it's a funny story. It includes Maine, and I hated Chardonnay, and it was, there was an anything but Chardonnay ABC movement about 2 decades ago, because people were making too much goopy, woody, buttery Chardonnay. There's nothing wrong with a bit of a buttery Chardonnay, but some of them were to the extreme.
Yeah.
And the cheaper you bought, the more of that you got. So I think when at the height of me not drinking Chardonnay was one summer when I came down to Maine and I went to Bradbury Brothers when Tom Bradbury owned it. And I just, pulled out all of $14. Remember, I'm in my 20s and the exchange was not good that summer. So that was like, for a 20-something-year-old, it was $25 back then, or 22. And now, now a person in their 20s might be able to afford $25. But back then it was really hard. And it was just such an obvious Chardonnay. When I went to wine school in Beaune, Burgundy for Pinot Noir, I realized we used to go around to classmates' cellars and taste. There was only about 20 of us in class, and they all had cellars. Of course, I didn't, and Mary didn't. And Luisa Ponzi's was over there in Washington County, Oregon, just outside of Beaverton. And so with Luisa, we'd go around to these cellars, and we were shocked by the Chardonnay. And I remember Luisa Ponzi saying, we can do this. We can do this. You've just got to do a wine that remembers, like I said earlier, to keep its shoulders back. You barrel ferment it, but it's not oaked. It's just barrel fermented with a mix of older and new barrels. And you get this texture, totally dry, but a round texture and a taste of wet rock and mineral. And those Chardonnays are lovely. And, America, United States has gotten a lot better at making those.
Yes.
But even in California and Santa Rita Hills, in Oregon, of course, Washington, but right here in the Finger Lakes, right here in Long Island, and other northeastern states, and now Ontario, Canada is doing it. And by the way, we work on the escarpment in Canada facing Lake Ontario, but aside from the Finger Lakes, there's also Lake Ontario escarpment stateside. So the escarpment goes right across Niagara Falls, and or just in front of it, and there's 5 or 6 wineries there. So you can visit those wineries when you're up near Canada before you head down to the Finger Lakes. But the Finger Lakes are glorious for Riesling, and they're doing good Pinot Noir and Chardonnay as well, and Gewürztraminer. But I would say, though, I also start, to answer your question directly, with a bottle of wine in my hand or what I feel like drinking off the restaurant list. Then I look at the food.
That's
what
I do.
I know, but it's not to say we're not foodies. We are foodies.
Yeah.
It's just other people remember everything they eat, every item on the menu and how it was prepared, and they have no idea what wine they drank. We're kind of on the other side of it, but I make a real effort to see what the chef's doing.
Yeah.
You know, when they come and they recite the laundry list of ingredients at the table that went into the meal, I put my head down and just listen. Because if I look at them, I might miss a word. It's like I have to concentrate. But yeah, it's a tough one because we love to cook here, and you have such great restaurants here too.
Yeah,
we do
we're
a bit of
very
both.
lucky in getting fresh things, and even our farmers markets. Frinkle Pod that's up on Log Cabin Road, and a few others that are, these people work really hard, and they are passionate about what they're doing, and you can see it when you're buying their product and you take it home and you do something with it, and it's lovely. So
it's so improved around here that all the restaurants, like you say, Frinkle Pod, the Kennebunkport. Is there another one I'm missing? Somewhere
there's a few. There's a few
more
around. Yeah. So.
You discover these things if you care.
That's it.
Visit after visit, you go next time.
Yeah. Gerard is in Lyman. That's another one that I absolutely love. This young man has really made many things taste good. He does a lot. He's got interns, out there. So, but I just can't believe they get up in the morning and, they go through.
Keep going. And then they have to sell it all.
And they have
go
to
to
sell
market
it all.
and stand there.
Exactly. Yeah. So
it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do with your life, though. It's a hard life.
Yeah. But we get to, I think we benefit from that, and it's like I don't care how much the tomato costs because it's good.
It's so delicious. This is tomato season. We're right there now.
I know, right now. Yes. So we usually finish our interview with sort of a rapid fire. Do you have a favorite flavor ice cream?
I probably do. It was probably, growing up, it was butterscotch ripple.
Oh.
And then I got really into the cherries and the raspberries. As I got more into wine, and when you travel to Italy with all the gelato, although we have it here on the East Coast, but those great pure fruit flavors kind of took over my childish caramels, which there's nothing wrong with dulce de leche and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I would go with a raspberry or a pure cherry now.
That sounds good. Good. You have a favorite movie?
I love to pull into, it's funny you should ask, I love to pull into a hotel in Algonquin that first night before coming up to Goose Rocks and searching for an old black and white movie on some station. If I can find one with Jimmy Stewart or something
that's great.
I just don't watch those anymore. So that's my choice for today anyway.
Oh, good. That's good. What is your favorite thing to do here when you're here on vacation? What's your favorite thing?
It's funny how I always love swimming, and I still go to the beach every day. But when your kids are young, you're dragged to the beach and you're hanging around with the other parents and you're building sandcastles with the kids, making sure they don't go too deep in the water, going out onto Timber Island, whatever it is you like to do with the kids, you're just glued there all day. You go up to eat. And now I realized, oh, no. My favorite thing to do here is to vary the bicycle riding with the beach time the thinking about dinner around 4 o'clock, I like to get up from the beach and say, now let's go to Bradbury's, or let's go to Frinklepod, or let's go to Langford Lobster and see what's there.
Yeah.
And what wine have I got at home? What wine might I complete that with? Love doing that. Then the cooking, and then of course walking on the beach early in the morning, late at night, all those things, and a little inland.
Yeah.
Like I went this time. I went to Saco and discovered the main department store, Rene's.
Oh, it's a main adventure.
It's a main adventure. So those little things creep in, and right down the street from them, just a little way, there's a new rotisserie that does killer chicken. I forget the name of it.
Dizzy Bird.
Dizzy Bird.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So you just go out to do something and discover something else. We
Yeah.
like to play tennis while we're here, but we find we don't get it in as much. I like going sometimes. Once I stayed overnight instead of Algonquin, I stayed at your monastery right here.
Oh, yeah.
And they have like a Lithuanian breakfast or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Because of a strange connection. So, yeah, we've been all over this town.
That's really good. Coolest place you've ever been?
Jesus, that's a really tough one. I think the coolest place I've ever been, like initially younger, would have been maybe Paris. And I have done all the arrondissements because I made wine there for years. And so when you're in and out at the airport and you spend a night there, like in Algonquin here, before it would be, I like to go where people live. So I just walk into a corner bistro, not a TripAdvisor one. I'd say, where are the menus only in French, and look for something. Now it's probably a little corner, as much as I love Maine, a little corner of Italy, northeastern Italy, or a little corner of France. There's so much. Every time you travel, even here, every time you travel, you think, well, I've done that. There's always something new to discover.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so I'm just curious. Just keep doing stuff.
That's good. That's really good. So if somebody was asking you about professional advice on, should I start down this path of, I love wine, I want to learn about it a little bit more, what advice would you give them if this might be their career?
I would say that in the past I might have said it's more of a hard road, but wine is not going away. And, the per capita is slightly rising, but more people are trying it.
Right.
And, we have second generation immigrants from other countries who the first generation don't drink wine because their country didn't. The second ones all do. So this is not a craze that's going to abate, So it's just going to become, we're going to know the terroir or the individual plots better in every state and every province that produces wine. They all have a great future. So the wines, the business around that, there's always going to be room for people who, like the one I met this morning, out on the road delivering wine to the Cape Porpoise Kitchen, who also knows about wine, just as there is for winemakers, for sommeliers. I mean, the one thing I would say is sommelier at a table, you have to really want to do that, because like being a line chef, it's hard to do maybe after you're 50. You don't want to be out every Friday and Saturday night.
Right.
When you're young, it's not so bad. But some people do it for their whole lives. They're real pro, and they just get used to having Monday and Tuesday off, right? And that's fine too. But there's lots of jobs in wine distributorships. There's more and more people blogging. A lot of people in wine cobble a life together of 2 or 3 things that are different. A lot of it can be done from home, right? But as for going in for winemaking, wineries are always looking for people to help at a harvest. And so, especially the bigger wineries, you start with that and you get your hands dirty and you see if you want to do that. It's hard work. But also viticulture, people always forget that there's not only the wineries, but there's people out in the fields. And if you like being outside, that's where they really have trouble finding people. So that if you went to even a year of community college for viticultural school, you would find a job like that.
Wow. Good to know.
It is good to know. There's lots of stuff. It's still expanding. We're not in a shrinking universe yet.
Yeah, that's great.
When I first went to the Finger Lakes, it was a bunch of ma and pops, and some of the wines were okay. And now there's like 20 wineries that are world class.
Oh,
there
wow.
may be 100 of them, but there's 20 that you could visit and just be really, you'll have to do the research to find out which 20 they are. imagine 10 years from now on your subject, if there's 50 of them that are world class, there's so many more restaurants there, so many more things to do in Canandaigua and Geneva and Watkins Glen, etc. So if we just look at the Finger Lakes, there's going to be expansion there. Long Island, there's going to be Hudson River Valley, same thing. You know, people are putting vineyards in the Catskills now, which is surprising, but they're doing it.
Yeah.
So there's lots to happen in the Northeast, especially if people who are watching this are from the Northeast. It's something to remember that we all drank 30 years ago European wine, Italian and French. That was it, with a little Spanish and German. And when Stephen Spurrier, who I knew personally quite well, when he did that Jugement de Paris, and the Americans won Chateau Montelena for the Chardonnay, and it was Cabernet Sauvignon, I guess it was Stag's Leap. And when they won, it's kind of like the whole, or America at least, it was on Time magazine. That movie Bottle Shock came out.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
But what happened, what's happened that's between the lines, was that they forgot the Northeast. We went from drinking French and Italian to only drinking American, and that American was only from California.
That's right.
Oregon, one state above, complained for 20 years, like they're not even reviewing us in the Wine Spectator.
Yeah.
So now, of course,
We're taking them seriously.
They weren't.
Yeah.
But now the Northeast is, we all know that Thomas Jefferson tried down in Virginia, and it didn't work out, probably because of phylloxera, I don't know, or because of the various fungus like oidium and powdery mildew and downy mildew. Now, of course, it can be done. It's warm enough here.
Yeah.
And so the winters are a little harsh. You've got to have vinifera. I mean, the wine grapes have to be able to stand up to the winters. But I think what's really important is the wines in the Northeast have, it's not like taste more like French. They have a structure that's leaner. And in French, we say agréablement tendu, or agreeably lean, because lean can be, oh, he's lean, she's lean. That can be sort of pejorative, but agreeably lean means they're just fit, you know. And I think these fit wines that are lower in alcohol please people who like European wines. And that's what the Northeast does. A lot of it's on limestone, which gives that European flavor, but some of them are on schist and granite and other things that make delightful wines too. On the West, it's a lot more sedimentary stone, which has a beautiful flavor, but it's a richer, more savory flavor with slightly higher alcohol usually. And it doesn't mean they're too warm, they're just different. And the wines are more bracing here, but it doesn't mean they're too acid. You know, they're not astringent. The better producers always from newer regions. It costs more money to produce in newer regions. And so, at the $13 level, it's hard to compete when you're a new region. You've got to just do your best. And get known for your best, you know.
And I think that's what people are figuring out. You don't have to have it all. You know, you just focus on what is your what is your passion? Which grape or grapes to make what you want be the best.
I think that's what will happen in the Northeast, because like if you go to Alsace, France, where they're known for Gewürztraminer, Riesling, and Pinot Blanc, and Sylvaner, they have a little Pinot Noir. But people don't go there and say, where's my Zin, where's my Cabernet Sauvignon?
Right.
They know that that's what they do.
Yeah.
It's mostly white.
Yeah.
The reds that are there are quite good. Some producers are excellent. But if you wanted Pinot Noir, you'd probably go to Burgundy first. If you're in Alsace, you go because you like Riesling. And that's what you like in the Finger Lakes. And I think as we don't have to offer everything to everybody.
Right.
You don't have to offer 40 wines.
Yep.
Do 2 or 3 or 10 wines from 2 or 3 grapes that are good.
And
focus. Yeah, and we are cowboys in the New World, so we don't want to be told what grapes being grown where. However, that'll eventually happen just by attrition and by the successful succeeding. So.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
What a great education, right, Mike?
Well,
wow.
Really,
thank you for sitting down with us and spending time in Maine and in Kennebunkport.
We love it. This will be a treasured part of my holiday. Just sitting down with you and talking.
Keep doing what you're doing, because it's great.
Thank you. We weren't able to sit down and talk for 3 years because of the pandemic.
I know. So this has been a real treat.
And thank you guys for giving back to the community. even to those who don't live here.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people who live here appreciate you most.
Thank you, Mike Kelly, for our production today, and thank you and your family. And we thank you all for tuning in, and hopefully we will see you right back here next time for another episode of What's Your Story?